Okay, so we've gotten through the application of the long leg posterior splint, and now we're going to talk about two different kinds of splints next. One is the short leg posterior splint, and a variation on that, the short leg stirrup splint. We're first going to discuss application of the stirrup splint and indications for when you may choose to use that. Remember that if you're in a bind or you find an application of the stirrup splint challenging, you could always go back to the short leg posterior splint for most of the indications that we preferentially may choose the stirrup splint. The stirrup splint is exactly that, in that it's a splint that will form a U shape over the ankle. And we use it primarily for injuries to the distal fibula epiphysis, Salter-Harris 1 fractures, Salter-Harris 2, Salter-Harris 3, fractures of the distal fibula epiphysis. There are also indications to use a stirrup splint for isolated tarsal bone fractures as well. The stirrup splint, in addition to the short leg posterior splint, are not meant for weight bearing. So it's very important to remember that those patients cannot bear weight on these splints. So it takes a lot of parental oversight to make sure that the children are not weight bearing. Weight bearing can cause the splint to be damaged. It could also lead to pressure ulcers. We're now going to have James walk us through application of the short leg stirrup splint.
Okay, so we're going to have Zach, our patient, lay down again for us. Again, ladies and gentlemen, your material does not change. Orthoglass, soft wall roll, ace wrap, stockinette. Okay, everything is the same. This splint is going to actually start off his heel and stop right at the top of his calf right here on both sides. Okay, so we need our stockinette first. Okay, so we're going to apply the proximal portion of our stockinette first. So you want to bring the stocking up a little high, because remember, you're going to fold this down, okay? This again will come off the distal end of his foot. Like so. So now we want to start applying web roll or soft roll. Just like last time, you're going to find that fifth metatarsal in that junction, and that's where you're going to start. Okay. Go around a few times. Then you're going to work your way down. Okay. Now in a minute, you're going to see me pad his heel a little bit thicker. And this is to prevent, like Dr. Leader mentioned earlier, pressure ulcers, because kids tend to want to walk on these, which they should not.
James is usually telling the parents and the child, if they're old enough, while he's applying this splint, he's usually reminding them of the reasons not to walk on it.
So, at the proximal end, go around a few more times. Bring your stockinette down. Pull your distal end back. Like so. Now remember, if your fracture or your injury is here, you can leave this exposed because this is not where your injury is, okay? You're going to be protecting this area here, okay? So now you're going to cut your orthoglass. Now you need to measure. How do you measure this? You can take a piece of web roll. Okay, there we go. Now, you would want to measure from the just below the bumper at your proximal end all the way up under the foot. Come on the other side. And that is approximately the length that you will need. So go to your orthoglass. Find the end. So this is approximately where I'm going to cut to get my length. So apply this to the patient. Let's see where we are. Great. Now remember, we're going to cut those edges down again. Never expose these to your patient. Pull your cotton back over your fiberglass. And remember, you wet one side of this. Bring this back to your patient. Now you're ready to secure it. Thank you, Dr. Leader. I prefer to secure this at the ankle. Once I do this, it will not move around on me. So I usually start here, come around, secure it. Now I can work my way back up. Alright, once you get that secure at his ankle, if you have a little extra, you want to make those folds, okay? They will hug his ankle and create a nice little cut. Come around, come up. There we go. Okay, then you need another one to finish out. You can start down here. And like Dr. Leader mentioned earlier, at this moment I will be talking about the parents about non-weight bearing, not getting it wet, and follow-up.
Which for most of these injuries, the follow-up is going to be with your local orthopedist and their office, typically within about a week from the time that you're seeing them. Most of these injuries do require orthopedic follow-up, so you will probably not be seeing them back in your own office for ultimate disposition. So this was application of the short leg stirrup splint, and we are going to move on shortly to the short leg posterior splint.